go. All right. Let the record reflect we've reconvened with all members present. Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I ask to remain standing after the pledge. Take a moment to remember two longtime Madison residents who lost. Richard Tracy, lifelong Madison and Chatham resident, died on March 2nd. He was 80 years old. Survived by his wife of 55 years, Catherine, an older brother, and his son Timothy, Stephanie, and Susan, and children, all of Madison. He was born in Morristown, July 9th, 1941, raised in Chatham. After graduating from Chatham High School, he enlisted in the United States Army in December 1963. Deployed with a Special Forces unit to Vietnam. He was awarded the Bronze Star Medal with a Lease for valor upon his return from service in 1965. Specialist Tracy received the medal for his heroism in the face of enemy fire while serving in Vietnam. After his time in service, he began a successful career as bar criminals in Fort Newark. And after retirement, Richard Arze, as he was commonly known, was a member of the Madison Elks Club, where he volunteered as Santa Claus for many years and was a long-standing member of the American Legion of Madison. And also Mary Ellen Newman died on March 9th after a brief illness. She was 67. Lifelong Madison resident, graduated from Madison High School in 72, Mary Dickinson in 76. A major portion of his professional career included retail industry prior to working at Boiler Clear LLC in Pinebrook. He was a dedicated lifelong member of St. Vincent's Martyr Church. Mary Ellen is predeceased by her father Alan, her brothers Bobby and Danny, survived by her mother Mary, devoted sister and her brother Helen and Bill. She's also survived by cherished nieces and nephew and her aunt Anne Luciano and Uncle Pat Luciano and Aunt Eileen Luciano, as well as many children. Let us take a moment to remember Richard Tracy and Mary Ellen Newman and express our thoughts on the families and friends of these. A motion for the executive minutes of February 28, 2022 as corrected.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. And a motion for the regular minutes of February 28, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or correction? All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome back to our first in-person meeting since reorganization. And of course, one of the in-person meetings early fall last year, so fall blur at this point, but it's nice to have everyone back here and those also watching at home. As a reminder that at this point you can only accept comments as people are in the room. Update that as we come along. For those that can see from home, you'll notice that Martin and George, who normally would be on the wall behind me, are not there right now. They are not being restored just as the Lincoln Center has been restored. That has been taken care of by the thank them for taking care of their great art. And a couple of things to catch up on. March weather, to comment on last meeting, has not only brought us roller coaster weather with 60 one day and but it's also brought storms and high winds. The thunderstorms of last Monday, 7th, not only knocked out train service west of South Orange, including Madison, which is coming tomorrow with a modified schedule, so if you need trains, please go online to check the schedule. But it also hit many of our neighbors, and while Madison had no outages, which of course is no surprise, as our well-maintained grid, many area towns did have issues, so has been our good neighbor practice. We supported JCCL with our crews. Madison restored power in 5 circuits in Chatham, another 5 in Harding. numbers continue to decline. It looks like a certainty that the case in Madison will occur on April 25th. And that is the night of a normally scheduled council meeting. So to allow everyone a chance to enjoy this great evening, this is the first time in 3 years, we will move the council meeting to Wednesday, April 27th as the usual time. And our employee of the month, in March, Dawn Algier, White Court Administrator, has been selected Employee of the Month. Some of the regular duties, Dawn has ably handled the additional transition tasks that were associated with the withdrawal of Hardy Township in White Court. And celebrating an anniversary this month is Dan Buckaloo, our Deputy Zoning Officer, who is celebrating 20 years. We're celebrating on March 3rd. So Dan, please thank him. And one more thing I want to talk about before we do a proclamation. On tonight's consent agenda, there's a resolution authorizing the flying of the Ukraine flag for the next 30 days. As we know, on February 24th, Vladimir Putin launched an unjustified invasion on a sovereign and free country, Ukraine. This move of aggression has also included direct attacks on civilians, hospitals, nuclear power plants, and even humanitarian corridors that Ukrainians led the attack. Already, 2.5 million Ukrainians have fled the country they love, while many have remained now in cities with basic needs such as water, electricity, cut off by the Russian army. Also, many have stayed behind to fight bravely for their homeland. To date, thousands of Ukrainian soldiers and civilians have been killed in this senseless invasion. At the flag raising, we were joined by 3 Bruce students from Ukraine. One student is trying to get his 12-year-old sister to Madison while his family will remain behind. Another student, when asked if her family would leave Ukraine, her reply was, they are staying to fight. Stories like this, along with the daily images of bombed homes and city centers, have reminded us what war truly is, and what a despot such as Putin can do with a total disregard for life and country. Just think of the imagery that many of us have seen multiple times: the pregnant woman being taken away from the bombed maternity hospital. Today, it was reported that both she and her baby died. This is what Putin's war, not Russia's war, is: a total disregard for life. We even feel the effects of war far beyond the images and stories through the rising gas prices, which will push inflation even more. This is a small price for us to pay compared to the cost of the citizens of Ukraine. This also serves as a reminder we must eliminate our reliance on fossil fuels, which are not only killing our planet, but fund despots such as Putin throughout the world. The proud people of Ukraine are not only fighting for freedom for the young democracy, but also fighting for the free people everywhere. For that reason, we proudly raised the Ukrainian flag last Monday, and we will continue to fly for at least the next 30 days to show that Madison and the world stands with Ukraine. Maureen, Rachel, and Deb, you want to come and join me? This is a proclamation for National Women's History Month. And we have the women of our council outside here. Whereas since 1987, the United States has formally recognized March as National Women's History Month. And whereas in 2022, Women's History theme is Women Providing Healing and Promoting Hope, as both an awareness of the ceaseless work of caregivers and frontline workers during the ongoing pandemic
and a recognition of the thousands of ways that women of all cultures have provided both healing and hope throughout history. And whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every aspect of American life by constituting a significant portion of the labor force and working inside and outside the home. And whereas throughout history, American women have played a unique role by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force. And whereas women in particular, important in this establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions of America, and whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement, and whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolition movement, emancipation movement, industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a more and fair, just society for all. And whereas, despite these contributions, the role of American women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued. It's in the literature, teaching, and study of American history. Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Conley, Mayor of Borough of Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby proclaim March 2022 as National Women's History Month and suggest the best way to celebrate women is to learn from them, which I do on a daily basis. Thank you. It's honor and privilege. There you go.
Thank you, ladies.
Reports on committees, utilities, Council President Landrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Electric Department. The Electric Department is currently working with New Jersey Transit to install 2 new utility poles on Danforth Road to raise the western circuit to a safer distance above New Jersey Transit catenary lines. On Sunday, March 6th at 3 p.m., the standby crew was called to pick up a repair a downed wire that was across Woodland Road. On Monday, March 7th, 31 of the 50 pole mount transformers ordered in June 21 have finally arrived. On Monday, March 7th at 9:15 p.m., the standby crew responded to a transformer malfunction alarm at the James Park substation caused by the inclement weather. On Tuesday, March 8th and Wednesday, March 9th, the Electric Department assisted JCP&L with storm restoration in Chatham and the surrounding area. The department also started upgrading a section of Woodland Road between Green Avenue and Prospect Street with new poles, new transformers, new wire with larger capacity. The department is also making great progress on the Victorian lamp post LED retrofit kit installations. Central Park and Central Avenue and Waverly Place are now complete. And finally, the department continues to be busy with emergency work cutouts, new construction service, and addressing customer inquiries and comments. From the Water Department. The Water Department repaired a high-low alarm system at the treatment plant on John Avenue and Station Road. The Water Department also assisted DPW with the brine application to the borough streets in anticipation of the March 9th snow-sleet storm. And finally, radio-readable water meters are still being installed regularly. Anyone interested in having their meter changed to the automated reading system should call the Water Department to schedule an appointment. That's it for the Water Department. And I'd just like to piggyback on something the mayor said in regards to the Ukrainian flag. I'm very close friends with a family from Ukraine who immigrated here in 1993. They have been utterly devastated as they watch the news of what's going on there. They came to Madison this past weekend, and when they saw the Ukrainian flag, for a minute they smiled, then tears came to their eyes, but they were very happy to see that Madison supports Ukraine. So I'd just like to thank, on their behalf, the mayor and the Borough for raising that flag. They truly appreciated it. It made them feel good.
Thanks. Public safety, Ms. Byrne.
The police chief, John Misha, and fire chief, Lou DeRosa, the Morris County 200 Club will be honoring 6 of Madison's first responders at their May 5th awards dinner ceremony, which annually honors Morris County first responders for valor and or meritorious acts of bravery. On August 17, 2021, there was a fire on Kings Road in which the resident, Mrs. Betts, had to be rescued. Due to the extraordinary efforts of the first responders, she was rescued and is alive today. Being honored from our fire department with Valor Awards are Lieutenant Dominic DeRosa, firefighter Sean Dorick, and firefighter Bruce Barrios, and being honored from our police department with Meritorious Awards are Captain Joe Longo, Sergeant Sean McCarthy, and Corporal Stephanie Aquino. Also being honored for their life-saving actions at this fire with Meritorious Awards are 2 Cedar Knolls firefighters and 2 Morris County OEM EMTs. Chief Misha and Chef DeRosa are very proud of their firefighters and officers and all the first responders involved on the August 17th night who led a coordinated effort to save the homeowner from the burning residence. This incident is a great demonstration of the partnership between our police and fire departments, who both train tirelessly in the interest of Madison's public safety. And from the fire department, Chief DeRosa received official notification that our new rescue pumper went into production on Wednesday, March 9th. The anticipated completion date is approximately late May, early June. Supply chain issues had delayed the start of production for nearly a year. We look forward to the arrival of our new rescue pumper during the summer. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you very much. Community Affairs, Mr. Hoover.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Downtown Development Commission and Director of Business Development, the next meeting of the DDC, the Downtown Development Commission, will be this Thursday, March 17th at 7:15 p.m. in the committee room next door. It's an open public meeting and everybody's invited to attend. Payday will be held this year on Saturday, May 7th. The T-shirt art contest is underway and the deadline for submission is Friday, April 15th. Contest flyers have been distributed to the schools and information has been posted on I Love Madison, New Jersey social media, and is available on Rosenet. Information regarding the sponsorship, donations, and volunteering has also been posted. Madison Farmers Market will be celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. It will open on Thursday, May 19th at Dodge Field. Vendor contracts have already been sent. From the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber will be producing and selling Mad Opoly, the only game in town. More information will be announced at the next meeting. Buying and selling the Easter egg will begin Friday, March 25th through Saturday, April 9th. Children are invited to search for Shelley and enter to win prizes. Easter Fun Fest will be held Saturday, April 9th from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Taste of Madison is scheduled for April 25th as mentioned at the Brook Lake Country Club. Cinco de Madison event is being planned for Thursday, May 5th. This will be a shopping, dining event. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Finance and Borough Clerk, Ms. Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we will have our 7th presentation on the budget. Over the past several months, we've discussed capital revenues, utilities, and open space. We've had a presentation on the municipal budget and fund balance, and most recently, a number of very detailed and information-rich presentations from our department heads. Tonight, we will cover utilities, the fund balance, and the full municipal budget one final time. We will also go over the strategic planning guidelines in detail, including our compliance and where we stand with all of them. The hope is that we have a consensus to move forward and direct the administration to draft the official municipal budget document for introduction at the March 28th council meeting. Assuming that direction is given, the official document will be posted and available for review by the general public for 28 days after the March 28th council meeting, as required by state statute. The document will also go down to the state of New Jersey this year, as we are under state review. Towns like Madison that are in excellent fiscal health are permitted to self-certify the budget 2 years in a row, but the third year the budget must be reviewed by the state. Towns that declared a special emergency last year due to the pandemic are required to be reviewed by the state every year. Fortunately, because of our fiscal strength, we were able to avoid declaring a special emergency. We were also able to keep property tax increases to 2%, maintain all our services, and continue to invest in our roads and infrastructure. These have been challenging times. Municipal revenues continue to be down with no indication that they will go back up to pre-pandemic levels. Corporate tax appeals are a serious concern that we must continue to monitor, but over the last 9 years, the municipal portion of your property tax has only increased 6%. Other neighboring towns have had an increase of 12% and even as high as 24% for the same period. As we continue to strive to ensure transparency in our budget process, all of the presentations, along with other documents, including the audit, annual debt statement, annual financial statement, and others, are available in the annual budget process section of RoseNet. Thank you.
Checking up on tech. Can you hear me? All right. Public Works and Engineering, Ms. Ehrlich.
The Engineering and Public Works Department reports that for Hartley Dodge Memorial, the plaza contractor has completed a resurvey of the upper plaza and stairs per the borough's request last Monday, and results of the survey will be available for discussion in the next week. A use agreement for the east wing of Hartley Dodge Memorial was finalized with the Madison Historical Society, and an updated space needs assessment within Hartley Dodge was initiated as part of the future floor plan for the east wing. For the Waverly Place community planning kickoff meeting took place with Bowler last week, and a series of community meetings will be scheduled within the next 90 days to generate feedback and input from the community. The Cook Plaza parking lot reconstruction meetings with both site consultant and electric consultant were held over the past 2 weeks. Access and relocation agreement revisions were sent from the borough attorney to the communication service providers whose pole-mounted equipment in the lot remains one of the final coordination items to address ahead of parking lot demolition and construction. And Madison Environmental Commission and Sustainable Madison Advisory Committee representatives met with the engineering department last week to review and suggest certain improvements to the Madison Stormwater Management Ordinance that was approved last February. Those changes may be considered by the council and planning board in future meetings. The DPW reports that we had 2 minor snow events in the last couple weeks, plus the brief but intense storm over the weekend. And DPW reports that all went well with our storm response. As you may have read in the joint announcement from the school district and police department, Public Works has unfortunately been working on repeated repairs at the Dodge Field bathrooms due to vandalism. And we have several updates and reminders on waste collection and recycling. Yard waste collection has begun for the year. Residents can get more information on roadsnet.org or by downloading the Recycle Coach app, which is a great way to get reminders and updates. Public Works is upgrading our cardboard compactor as a result of increased use and tonnage. The recycling center is getting a lot of use and seems to be busier and busier every few weeks. And Madison's high volume and quality of paper recycling has recently been a small but encouraging source of revenue, as the borough receives a few $1,000s each month for the value of our recycled paper and cardboard. Lastly, we have started a shared service with Chatham Borough, allowing those residents who are subscribers to Java's Compost commercial composting service to drop off their food waste and compostable food packaging at the Java's Compost bin, which is co-located at the Madison Recycling Center. And in the next few weeks, we look forward to announcing details for a new distribution of finished compost for gardening and soil improvement at a pickup location in Chatham. Details to come from DPW. That's all.
Thank you. Our return to in-person is not without glitches. I'm switching microphones, which hopefully is working better. And we just sign up for our Java, so we're all set. So thank you for updating everyone. And health, Mr. Range.
Thank you, Mayor. Cases of COVID-19 in New Jersey and Morris County continue to decline. Morris County's COVID-19 community level is currently low. Remember, the new CDC COVID-19 community level looks at 3 key metrics, including cases of COVID per 100,000 residents, new COVID-19 positive hospital admissions, and the percent of staffed hospital beds occupied by COVID-19 patients. Based on our level, masking is generally no longer required or recommended in most public settings, including Madison Public Schools and borough buildings, offices, and other facilities. Note that masks are still required in some situations, including healthcare settings on airplanes and public transportation, as well as indoor transit stations and airports. The TSA and CDC have recently extended the travel and transit masking rules through April 18th. Visit rosenet.org for updates on New Jersey's COVID-19 status, and remember to continue to wash your hands, stay at home if you feel ill, and stay up to date with all recommended doses of your COVID-19 vaccine. Finally, tonight, 2 programming notes. First, from the Madison Health Department, our health education team will be presenting the Wellness Initiative for Senior Education, or WISE program, in April and May. WISE is a 6-week program especially designed for seniors, focusing on stress management, mental health, managing medication use, aging process, substance abuse, and other topics. Madison residents have 2 opportunities to participate, either at sessions which will be held at the Madison Civic Center on Walnut Street, or those presented at the Library of the Chathams. Dates and specific times to follow. And second, from the Madison area YMCA. The Y is collecting relief supplies for Ukraine through this weekend, and my guess would be probably after that too, but at least this first tranche through this weekend. Priority supplies include cravats, ace bandages, tourniquets, rolled gauze, tampons, latex-free gloves, pain relievers, and other first aid supplies. Donations can be dropped off at the YMCA Family Center on Kings Road. Additional details can also be found on the WISE Facebook page. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Now, communications and petitions.
None received, Mayor.
Now we're on to our first of 2 invitations for comment. Please remember that this is limited to our 2 discussion items or the resolutions which I'll outline shortly. If you want to comment on an ordinance that has a hearing tonight, you will do that when the hearing is open. And if you want to comment on an ordinance that is being introduced tonight, you can do that on the second comment period. So again, the 2 agenda discussions you may comment on are the Gateway and Wayfinding presentations by Merge, and then also our budget hearing that was just outlined by Councilwoman Cohen. These are the resolutions that will be part of the consent agenda that you may comment on. Resolution 93, appointing Austin Nash to position of police officer, and the pay for this position is based in accordance with the Police Benevolent Association collective bargaining agreement. Also, Resolution 94 is appointing Dylan Gonzalez to the position of police officer. Same arrangements with compensation. Resolution 95 is authorizing submission of Morris County Historic Preservation Trust Fund grant application for the Madison Masonic Lodge for execution and execution of a 25-year lease agreement. We are entering a lease agreement for the main floor of the Masonic Lodge, which will allow us to run programming there and work together to restore that beautiful building. Resolution 96 is a resolution approving person-to-person transfer of plenary retail distribution license for from TRIC Corp. to Madison Gallery LLC located at 29 Main Street. Resolution 97 is authorizing Madison area YMCA 5K run on local streets on Sunday, May 15th. Resolution 98, approving the annual Little League Parade to be held on Saturday, April 9th, first time in 3 years, and that will be at 11 a.m. Traditionally, it had been 12 noon, but this year it will be 11 a.m. Resolution 99 is authorized submission of an application to New Jersey Clean Energy Program and Community Energy Planning Grant Program. Resolution 100 is authorizing the display of the Ukrainian flag at the Hartley Dodge Memorial in support of the country Ukraine, as outlined in my comments. So you can comment on any of those resolutions or the 2 agenda discussion items. If you wish to comment, please step forward right now. When you get to the lectern, state your name, address, and write the same on the clipboard, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, but you will be given a 1-minute grace and stopped at 4. Anyone wishing to comment?
Well, Tom's coming up. On 97, you said May 15th. This says May 22nd. I just don't know which is the right date for the 5K at the Y.
Yeah, it's whatever it says. Yeah. Don't listen to what I say, listen to what it's written. Sorry.
Got it.
Thank you for correcting that. All right, name, address, and the agenda item or resolution you're commenting on, and you can start your comments.
Tom Harlan-Putis, 27 Pomeroy Road. Mayor, you just briefly touched on Resolution 99 2022, which sounds like a great opportunity for the borough to gain support. I guess it's from the state, but I don't know if you were going to elaborate on that later. I looked online, I couldn't find anywhere where what's the description of the resolution, and it's great that we're pushing forward. We really are doing a lot to make the town greener wherever we can. So if you can elaborate on that, if you were going to, then sorry for jumping the gun, but I didn't know what the plan was. And then kudos to you for the acknowledgement for National Women's History Month. That's, something that we have to acknowledge more and more, because they probably are the more sane leaders who could help us change the way the world is managed now. Can I make a comment on the electric utility presentation that was talked about from one of the council people? I don't remember who even said something.
No, that would
Something
be the
brief.
second comment period.
Want me to come up again?
Yep.
Okay, sure, that would be a pleasure. So, and then thanks again for the acknowledgement of Ukraine. And I saw the flag last week too, and it was very touching, so it's great. We have to make more of a statement like that whenever we can. Thanks.
Thank you. And the background on Resolution 91 is for free technical assistance regarding solar and EV charging stations. So as we look to do more or start doing solar in Madison and expand, I think we are leading the way in EV charging stations, but we've got a long ways to go, so it will assist us in that process. Anyone else wishing to comment on any of the resolutions or the agenda discussions? Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting. And we now go to our first agenda discussion, Gateway Wayfinding. Step right up to the lectern, introduce yourself, and take us through.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is John Bozio from Merge, and we're here to present the Wayfinding program. It's good to see you all in person, by the way. I see most of you 2D for the past 9 months, so it's nice to finally meet you. We've been working with the borough on a wayfinding plan and schematic design for signage within the borough. What you have is just examples of some things that are out there now. The borough has signs. You don't have a sign program or a sign system. So you see things like gateway signs, parking signs, some directional signs. The idea of the wayfinding program is a lot of these things will come down and will be replaced. So I don't want you to think as we go through this process that we're adding to what's out there. We're trying to make it a much more consistent and organized approach to signage in Madison. If you think of wayfinding, you always think of it sort of big picture in. So you get directed to Madison, you arrive, you go to either a destination or the downtown, you look for parking, you become a pedestrian, and you find your way. Maybe there's an orientation map, and you finally get to your destination. So all of these tools are sort of at each touch point, when do you get this type of information? We started with a wayfinding survey where we had 177 responses, and 71% were borough residents. So we got a lot of good information from that, not only just what the top destinations are, but what are some of the wayfinding issues and some of the wayfinding tools that we should consider in the program. And that really gave us a good framework to start with. I should mention as we look at that, we looked at in the assessment not only just sort of static signage, but were there opportunities for digital elements as well, and I'll touch briefly on that. Just looking at from an assessment standpoint, where are the gateways in to Madison, which ones are primary, which ones are secondary. This helped us also when we get into the planning stage. We also went through a series of reviews of what destinations should be included. So we don't direct to individual businesses. We're not allowed to do that. It's basically nonprofit attractions, parks and rec, historic sites, parking, those kind of things. Just some maps that sort of started to show that. Like I said, we did look at some digital components. I think one of the things that came out of it was you could have different kinds of mobile apps or tours, maybe a historic tour or maybe a trails app, and those were some recommendations that came out of the plan. It's not part of what's moving forward at the moment. We're really concentrating on the signage tonight. I think when you look at the signage design, I think one of the benefits we have from a design standpoint is that Madison has a really strong brand. So strong color, strong identity, and we tried to bring that into the design process. The designs were reviewed by the steering committee as well as a group of stakeholders, and we went back to those two groups a number of times. We originally started with 3 design options, and I'll just sort of flip through these, which start to show the sort of family of signs. I mean, this was option 1, option 2, and then option 3. So that went through the review process, and we then went to option 4. Now, option 4 is sort of based on the following. Option 1 was our basis for design. The red rose at the top of the sign, clean, simple, easy to read from option 1. There was the rose symbol rather than the M, which we had in another one. Option 2, the groups liked the pop of the parking symbol. Some liked the metalwork. Option 3 was not really liked that much, which is fine, but they did like the modularity of that so that it will be interchangeable going forward, and some like the kiosk design. So we landed on, this is option 4, and then was reviewed by everybody. I think we've made a couple of adjustments even after the last meeting. So, here you can start to see we've expanded this out to the different vehicular sign types. You will see there's engineering criteria that is guided by DOT and the Federal Manual for Traffic Control Devices. Where you have 4-inch high copy, which is that single pole sign, and 6-inch high copy when you have a higher speed road. So basically on the edges of town, you may see something that's a little bit larger, but then once the speeds come down, you see the single post signs. You can see we brought in the rows at the top and Madison as that identifier, really sort of brands the strength of the brand. It is modular again, so the panels will be able to be changed out over time from a maintenance standpoint. And then parking. So the parking signs, really establishing an identity for parking that you can follow through the streets, and then when you arrive at the parking lot, that you're sort of repeating and reinforcing that identity. That identity should be reinforced on printed materials, websites, so that it's introduced prior to a visitor arriving, and you could see those there. We also moved the rules and regulations for each lot onto a separate sign, so when you pull in, that's where you get it. So if that does change, you don't have to change the larger parking identification sign. Then once you get out of your car, you become a pedestrian. There may be an orientation map and then pedestrian directional signs. The option for an interpretive panel. The kiosk could be located at you'll see it at the sort of the steps of the train station. We've always viewed the train station as another gateway into town. And then we started to expand that into gateway elements. So you don't have a lot of room at your gateways. There's the horizontal clearance is sort of minimal, so they are on the smaller scale or vertical. But it's taking that language that's established by your brand and spreading it across all the different sign types for a much more sort of consistent identity. We did have this one larger one. This might be as you come into downtown on James Park. I think that's really the only location where you have large horizontal space. We are at the point where we are starting to locate where signs go. So where each size and configuration goes, that we'll talk to the city about that. Then we've just dropped these in so you could start to see these, what they may look like in play. So this is coming in as a small gateway sign, vehicular directional. You just follow that to your parking lot. You'll notice we turned all of the parking lot signs perpendicular to the road, so as from a distance you can start to see it, and it pops out. Kiosk at the train station. Now, we'll start to get into, all right, what kind of information will appear on those? Is it a map? Is it an interpretive panel? Does it have changeable messages? That sort of thing. And then pedestrian directional signs. So as you come down, you'll start to get pedestrian information. As I said, we've started to identify where the signs go and what they say. I've turned that over to Lisa in the past couple of weeks. That also will give us an idea of how many signs. We'll be developing a phasing and budget plan that you'll be able to review, and that'll take us through. Ultimately, we'll be coming up with documents that the project can go out to bid and be implemented, either as a single or multiple phases. We'll see how that works itself out. So that's an overview, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, John, and having been part of the process, I've seen this before, and it's great work, and I think it will make a big difference in navigating, being welcome to Madison and navigating around town. Comments or questions? Deb?
Hi. So I was at a couple of the meetings towards the beginning. I think the last meeting I was at where we went over option 1, 2, and 3. So it's nice to see the end result. And Lisa, this may be more for you, I don't know. But the changeable sign at the train station just worries me only because somebody's got to keep up with it. There's nothing worse than driving by a sign that hasn't been updated. So for me, I actually almost like the static one better than the changeable one, because an event happens on May 20th and it's May 25th and it's still advertising the event for May 20th because somebody hasn't gotten to it yet. So that's just my 2 cents for wherever that needs to go.
Yeah, whenever we do all kiosks of that nature, I always say the design is one part, but the administration of it is a whole nother ballgame. So we will be getting into those conversations as to what information should be there, and if you have to sort of be honest with yourselves as to how much you can update something.
Bob, and then Maureen?
Piggybacks off of Deb's a bit. The ones where, I guess it's modular, where, like, if you can picture going into a mall, and like you could say you want to go to a restaurant, you push that button, and then the restaurants appear, and it could tell you, a map would pop up and show you where it is. That, to me, is very useful, especially for somebody coming from out of town. Is there any thought to doing something like that? I know you said you don't advertise individual establishments, but that really wouldn't be like an advertisement. It's more like a direct.
Yeah, you can go into that level of detail with a kiosk. You just can't do it in the public right away for directional signs. We did have a lot of conversations, I'm sure the group is here, about digital signage and how much that would cost. And you still have, even with the digital signage, even though it's easy to update, you still have to administer it and go through that process. So those were conversations that we have. Any of the designs, if we decided that was something we were going to do, can be adapted to have a screen.
Yeah, Maureen?
Thank you. That was I think, very clean and clear signs. What's the phase-in time period from rollout to getting it all done downtown?
Depending upon when the funding comes available and the bidding, the bidding probably takes 4 to 6 weeks to whatever your procurement process is, and then I would say it's somewhere between 6 and 9 months, depending upon how many signs you end up putting in. The phasing is typically built around sign types. So you can say, I'm going to do kiosks, but I'm not going to do pedestrian signs, or I'm going to do gateways, but I'm not going to do vehicular. Because they don't necessarily talk to each other, you can't say, I'm going to do this road, but not that road. So when we put the phasing together, it'll be based on grouping sign types that make sense together.
Thank you.
And at this point, we've only funded the design part of it. We have not funded any of the actual signage. Eric? And then Rachel?
Yeah, this might, just come a little later, but I know, again, being part of the process, we had talked at one point on particularly the gateway signs, that rose element at the top being a little more dimensional or with a cutout. And I think we're kind of going there with this rendering, and of course, the rendering's hard, but just so folks are clear in kind of that top element being a little either dimensional or a punch out or whatever we can do from a design standpoint. But that was a topic of at least 15 or 20 minutes worth of conversation, so
Yes.
worth calling it out here.
Correct. The gateways will have more dimension to them, and then when you get sort of the lesser expensive signs, then it goes to a flat graphic.
Great, thank you.
And Rachel?
I just have a sort of, I guess, a question about how this is bid out. Do you recommend that the borough seeks like a fabricate and install contractor, or, you know, would we have a fabricator that delivers the signs and then our own public works department installs them, or how does that usually go?
The best is for the fabricator to fabricate it and install it. We have had clients, I have one doing it now, where where the town is installing it, but they're much smaller in quantity and they're like bike signs. So they're not gateways or anything like that. So it's you don't want, one thing I will tell you not to do is send out two bids, one for fabrication and one for installation, because the two groups never sort of match up. So fabricate and install one contract. They may have subcontractors, but one contract.
So that's not an I understand that this is just the design phase, but because we have, you know, capable departments here, we often seek some efficiency or savings by self-performing some types of work. Is that something you would not recommend for signage in terms of the
Depends on which sign types. If it's something like this, which is a little bit larger and a little bit more complicated, I wouldn't recommend it for that. But if it's just maybe pedestrian signs or getting strapped to a pole, that's easy. I also recognize that municipal staff have lots of things that they're going through, so the amount of labor associated with some sign types is smaller and they can do it, but you wouldn't want to tie up their time in the more complicated ones.
And if it gets damaged on installation, it's on the contractor if it's one and the
That's
same.
true.
Yep.
Or if it gets damaged while it's being stored.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I have been involved with this project pretty much from the beginning. And I must tell you that the results are fabulous. I really, really like the results, and I thank you very much for the presentation. I'm looking forward to getting all the signs up as soon as possible.
Thank you.
know, I think it's really good.
We had a lot of great feedback from everybody.
All right, and John, don't forget to move the microphone closer to you when you're speaking. So.
I was told to leave it there.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much, John.
Thank
you.
Great work.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the next steps.
And thank you, Lisa and the DDC.
And as our CFO is working his way to the podium, this just in on Resolution 97, that the agenda was incorrect with the date of May 22nd, but the resolution is correct with the date of May 15th for the YMCA 5K race. So let the record reflect that the mayor was correct.
Never in doubt, Mayor. I'm putting on my stopwatch here, so keep under a reasonable amount of time. Councilwoman and Finance Liaison Deb Cohen explained the agenda and the next steps that we're going to. Let's see, Michael, am I supposed to turn this on? Probably. Give me a hand here, Michael. Thank you. Thank you. Transparency is just a slide talking about where residents can find information. This is on every budget, budget presentation, so you're able to find out where all the information is. As Councilwoman Cohen said this evening, there's no budget vote tonight. We're asking for consensus that the information that's presented here be folded into the municipal budget, the official state budget document, and then that would be presented to council on March 28 for introduction. It would have to sit statutorily for 28 days. It'll be 30 days because the next meeting is going to be on Wednesday, April 27th. So no vote tonight, but we're asking for your consensus to move forward. The proposed hearing schedule, as we just discussed here, and this is goals and important questions that I had brought to council's attention, and I've done it in multiple times, but I just thought it was good to have it all in one section. I think the goals in general will always be limited tax increase, maintain services, maintain funding for capital programs, and making sure that we are financially stable. And examples are the global instability that we're seeing right now with fuel prices. Important questions to ask are about the fund balance and capital, and are there large increases in appropriations or anything going on with revenues? And are there any concerns with the long-term fiscal picture or other outstanding items? I think those are just general questions to always ask about. I don't know if I've got a bad battery here, Michael, but thank you for advancing that. This is the budget presentation, the exact budget that was presented to council back on February 14th with one change. Line B24 was changed and increased $75,000 because gas prices have gone up significantly. We don't know. They could be $6 at the late in 2 months, so we want to make sure we have enough funds in that budget line to account for that increase in appropriations. We increased line B1, which is fund balance. The hope is that we don't experience those prices, we don't need that money, and the fund balance lapses back into fund balance because it was unspent. Part of the process for strategic planning guidelines advanced by Ben Wolkowitz and others, and Art Powell and Tom Bintinger and Mike Soriano, was to draft a budget alternate format. I'm not going to talk through this. I just think it's just a different way to look at the budget and present it. And then we have this, which some people find is incredibly easy. Some people find this incredibly hard on their eyes. Again, it's a different way to look at the budget and the flows. I'm not going to go through the specifics of it, but for people who are more visual, this may be an appropriate or easier way to understand it. If anyone ever has any questions, they're welcome to come to me, and I will talk through each of these schedules and compare them to the main municipal budget. The electric utility, this document has not changed at all from February 14th. Same revenue assumptions and same appropriation assumptions and fund balance assumptions. And the same with the water utility. We have the same revenues, same appropriations, and same fund balance estimates and alike. So there's no changes in either of those documents. As Councilwoman Cohen said, a bow and a nod to Councilman Wolkowitz for all the work that he did on strategic planning guidelines. And as Councilwoman Cohen said this evening, we're going to talk for a few minutes in more detail about the guidelines. The guidelines were created specifically for this, to point and to look at certain specific metrics, measure them, compare them year over year. They're not supposed to be hard and fast rules, as the fourth paragraph said, but they're to tolerate exceptions when needed. And last year we needed some exceptions during the pandemic. So we intentionally deviated from some of the guidelines last year, and we're trying to move our way back towards them. We're hopeful that within the next few years we will get in compliance with them. This is a chart that shows the guidelines. It's quite specific. If you want to flip through the math, you can actually see that it references line S12 of the surplus document and divide it by B35 of the budget document, and that gives you the percentage of municipal fund balance used in the budget as a revenue, and we are above that. Which is in compliance. Anything is green is in compliance, anything that red is not. Operation shortfall, which has to do with basically how much is being funded outside of municipal revenues that are being funded by operations that are being funded by the electric utility. This year, it's about 21.8 million, and that's 6.6%, so that's in compliance. Guideline 3A is the total amount of utility transfer, and you'll see I put in barely. Most years, or in 2019 and 2020, we were really moving towards working on that. My goal is to reduce our reliance on the electric and water utilities, and we were moving that way, and then we had the pandemic, and we fell out of compliance with this guideline. In other words, we used more utility surplus as a percentage of the budget. This year, we're back. We may bounce back and forth on this one for a number of years because of the way fund balance is generated and the way we're choosing to use utility revenues and fund balance to fund capital. So it's in the barely mode, and it's definitely a metric we need to watch. Debt service, we're fully in compliance with. It's supposed to be under 10%, and we're less than 7%. And capital improvement fund, this is another one, very much related to 3A with the appropriations of the surplus fund balance of the electric and water utility, is how much capital is this budget, how much of this budget is being put into the capital improvement fund. And we are below the 10% metric, and I am not sure we'll get above there in the next few years. It really depends on a lot of questions with regard to revenues and tax appeals and our general performance within the budget. Maybe the gas prices don't go up like we think they are. So we can actually sit here, I'm not going to do it, but we can actually sit here. Michael, can you advance the slide, please? We could actually sit here and go back and forth, if this clicker would work, to look at the different lines and go, okay, B33 divided by B35 is guideline 4A. Just so you understand, you can do that. The lines on the far left corner show what's referenced in the strategic planning guidelines. I'm going to look at my timer here. And those are the first set of strategic planning guidelines. There are others that are more less number-oriented and more text-oriented. And guideline 1C has to do with the surplus or fund balance in excess of the upper limit, how much of it is being used for capital. I would say, again, we're transitioning in that. The others we're all compliant in. The reserve for uncollected tax is a little low, but I think guideline 6B, that's a somewhat arbitrary number of 2.65%. Our reserve for uncollected tax has been 2.5% on an annual basis. It increases at a same percentage. I'm not going to go into detail on the revenues. This slide was presented before, except to note that we continue to see municipal revenues that are far below pre-pandemic levels. And I think that's how we're going to end up ultimately fixing the long-term fund balance, long-term reliance on the utility, and long-term capital situation, is when these revenues finally come back up. Right now, we're not seeing any significant improvement. You've heard before, these are the three revenue lines that are the most, that stick out the most, that are down the most. Municipal fund balance is our long-term financial position. I'd almost point out here, if you're a graphical person like me, you'll see that back in 2019, the red box was the biggest of the three. Now in 2022, the yellow box is the biggest. It's actually the electric utility that is generating a larger percentage of fund balance. I think that's going to be a short-term thing based on some anomalies in capacity markets and things like that. I think that surplus and the fund balance generated by electric utilities will go down. Hopefully the red box gets bigger, which is the municipal. That is a schedule on the fund balance. You'll see S on the left-hand side, that reference to some of the strategic planning guidelines, the numbers that are on this schedule. We've talked in the past, and I'm not going to go into great detail, on the rateable base, the various office spaces that we have in town, and how there's a tremendous pressure on tax appeals. I'm looking at Bob Landrigan because I know he works on that full-time. That's his job, and we're seeing a tremendous pressure in that market. The revenues from the new ratables is something that we've really benefited from in years past, where new buildings, the benefit and the taxes paid by new buildings outpaced our loss in appeals. That didn't happen this year for the first time since 2017. We had more in appeals than we did in new construction. So hopefully buildings like Community Place and the movie theater will help with the new construction side, but we anticipate a tremendous pressure on the corporate and office space markets for tax appeals. So we may not have this extra revenue for a number of years. These are the largest appropriations that's been presented before in the past. I included it here for anyone who happens to come across this. This is administration's kind of what we'll call list of concerns or did I get ahead of myself? I apologize. As I said, we're not asking for a vote tonight, and Madison's been fortunate enough to weather the challenging financial times, and I think in general this is a very austere budget. This is a list of concerns that also came from the February 14th presentation between affordable housing, collective bargaining, new debt, and other issues. We have our work cut out for us on future budgets, and it's really important for us to do a 2% tax increase. I want to say that 2% tax increase only keeps us at a very low rate compared to other municipalities. These are nearby municipalities that what their tax rate on the municipal side has done since 2013. Madison's only gone up 6%. Everyone's gone up 2 to 3 times what Madison's municipal tax rate has gone up. So administration thinks it's reasonable to ask for a 2% increase this year given everything that's going on. This is a graphic representation of the municipal taxes as it relates to total taxes. You can see the 6% increase. This is for an average home assessed at $667,200. It's an actual specific house in town on Green Village Road that's basically right in the smack dab middle average of a home in town. So we use that particular home to track their taxes and to note it over a period of time, and you can see which the county, the school, and municipal, the portion of the tax increase for each of those major areas. Another slide you've seen before, all the tremendous benefits that Madison offers and the services between fire, police, garbage pickup, yard waste. These are items that don't happen in Chatham, in all towns, in Chatham Township and in Florham Park. Recreation, you're getting all of this. That home that's on Green Village Road pays $2,900, it's going to pay, or paid $2,969 in 2021 on their property taxes for municipal, and they got all these services. Sewage treatment means you don't have to have a septic system, health department, fire, public library, plowing, and everything else. A 2% tax increase on this average home represents less than my chai tea latte grande at Starbucks, which is, I think, $5.25. It's only $4.94. 2 other things. If this would work, happy Pi Day and happy birthday to my daughter, Paige. Any questions?
I think you went through that one a little too fast.
Okay,
All right, there you go.
as a kindergarten,
Paige, if you're watching, happy birthday.
Day and hiking, and I'll give anybody $1 if they can identify where Paige is hiking. So, any questions?
John and then Bob?
Yes, can you hear me now? Is this okay? Good. Given you talked about the increase in gas prices, fuel prices quite a bit. Given the tremendous increase in gas prices, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon, and the fact that we really do need to incentivize people to transfer to electric vehicles, do we have any plans to increase the number of charging stations we have? We have 10 right now. 2 times 10 is 20 actual charging stations. Do we have plans to increase charging stations in town?
So a good question. We're looking into it, and as Councilman Hoover mentioned, we have 10 charging stations, but each station has 2 cables, 2 charging ports off of it, so 2 vehicles can charge at each of those locations. As you know, Council just passed an ordinance that was mandated by the state that made charging stations basically a permitted use. So if Walgreens came in and said they wanted to put charging stations in their building, and isn't this great, the bar method is there, someone can plug in and go shop or go work out at bar method, they could put a charging station in on their own just by coming in and filing the permits. So we anticipate seeing that. In fact, I believe the Starbucks application that went through, did that go through, Mayor, the planning board? Starbucks has actual charging stations already in there. So we anticipate a growth of privately owned charging stations that are co-located near logical uses. Having said that, we are looking at other grants and other opportunities to expand our charging station fleet here for the borough as well. Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah. Jim, as these corporate parks and buildings start to go dark, from lack of use, and you talked about the electric surplus. You see that getting smaller as the money brought in from electric could potentially go down?
I actually think that we could see it go lower on the commercial side. And we could see residential drop a little bit because now people are going back to their offices, just not their offices in Madison. So I could see the revenue dropping a little bit on the electric utility. However, my larger concern is longer term down the road. We have a very low price for capacity. It's kind of an oddball year for the capacity market, but those prices are going to increase. So we've got some good years last year, this year, and probably the next 2 years for electric utility fund balance. But 3 or 4 years down the road, that's going to be something that we're going to need to focus on. And fortunately, we have a $2 million electric utility dividend, which is in here. That $2 million dividend is in here. It's going to continue as part of this budget, but we may have to ratchet that back in 3 or 4 years. So thank you.
All righty.
Rachel?
Jim, can you explain what capacity is and how we can plan ahead to try to reduce those charges to the borough and to its residents?
How much time do we have? So a capacity in very short definition is the charge that we pay the grid to have enough generation for the very hottest peak days of the year. Peak tends to be over the summer and tends to be, believe it or not, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, even 6 o'clock is when the peak is. I would have guessed 1 o'clock when the sun is the highest, but it's the hottest at the end of the day. Offices are still consuming, and we're all coming home and turning on our own personal air conditioners, or at least the kids when they get home from school. So the capacity charge is paid to PJM, which is our regional transmission organization, and they ensure that there's enough generators out there. And there are certain generators that only get turned on 5, 10, 15, 20 days a year. In order to make sure that they're ready to go, they get this chunk. And we traditionally have paid over $3 million a year in capacity charges. This year it's less expensive. I think it's around $2 million, but it's guaranteed to go back up to $3 million. And the planning side, oh goodness, time of use rates, and the fact that we now have these smart meters and looking to incentivize people to shift their consumption pattern is a tremendous way to reduce capacity. I am an advocate for the installation of a natural gas powered generator that would run 50 hours a year, 100 hours a year. That's all it would run. And that would reduce our capacity cost. And ultimately, we would pay for that generator through that savings. Yeah. May take 12 years or 15 years, but we have that. And so if we have a significant issue that happens, and in this global world, it's a little scary seeing what's going on at the Ukraine, to be able to island ourselves and not have to rely, should something happen to the grid, that generator could potentially power all of downtown Madison, keep us, and all of New Jersey could be dark, and Madison could be energized during that time. If we had that, there would need to be thoughtful discussion with environmental stakeholders to make sure they were comfortable with it, catalytic and emissions controls on that generator. But I would point out, and you and I have talked about this, Councilwoman Ehrlich, before that, if we're running that on the hottest day of the year, it's way better to run that generator that was bought in 2024 that is new and highly efficient and not a heavy CO producing unit versus an old coal-fired power plant, which is what the alternative is on the hottest days of the year. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That's one of my favorite subjects to discuss, so thanks for indulging me. I just feel like when the borough's financial health dovetails with these important utility questions, it's really critical that we highlight where those two things overlap and how we can plan ahead for them. I guess since I have the floor,
Yes.
I just feel like I want to acknowledge how grateful I am that we have the strategic guidelines, because in times like this, as we deal with, uncertain times and, bad years, hopefully behind us, not ahead of us, it would be hard for us perhaps to gauge how we're doing and make good decisions. So the fact that the council can refer to the guidelines and that you have so clearly shown, where we stand relative to these, the wisdom of these guidelines gives me a lot of confidence that we're in, good hands, that we are adhering to the guidelines that we adopted, through the wisdom of, many dedicated volunteers who created those guidelines. And I guess it's just a reflection and some gratitude for the council members and volunteers who came before us, who contributed to those guidelines and give us the, confidence to give you the go-ahead to proceed with this budget information tonight.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you for emphasizing. A lot of work obviously went into those guidelines, and part of the thought process behind it is every year you start the conversation at zero. Madison doesn't have to do that every year. And I also want to say, as Jim goes back, I greatly appreciate the pictures of Ben Wolkowitz every year that we show as we do that, because his work on that and his work for the borough was really made it possible.
Trying to get there, Mayor.
And it's great
Maybe
smile
Michael
in
can
that
help
one,
me slide back
that one
to that
picture.
slide of Ben,
Yep.
and which is
While you-
slide 11. And then once we're there for a moment, reflect on how great Ben was, to be honest with you.
As I often said that...
Can we get back to 11, Michael? We're on 16 right now.
Yeah, Ben once mentioned that his least favorite job in his whole career was as a professor, but I would have signed up for a class from him any time, that's for sure. Eric, as we're going back to...
Thank you. Jim, just one clarification on the capacity thing. We could also do other borough-owned generation, not just, solar, or borough-owned solar, or other...
Thank you. I mean, I could talk, I could
Yeah.
talk about this, but I'm trying to keep it.
You were trying to keep it brief, so you only mentioned one, but I wanted to give you the
but thank you.
opportunity there.
We are looking at some significant borough-owned carport and roof-mounted at DPW solar that could energize generate energy for hundreds and hundreds of homes in town. And you're exactly right. That generating energy during the capacity time and therefore reducing our costs. The solar panels are typically oriented towards due south, which means they're going to generate the most at 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock. They will generate less at 4, 5, and 6, but they still will generate. Batteries, a large battery backup system tied to that solar panel is something that could also help us with the peak. We would actually charge the battery maybe at nighttime when the electricity is very inexpensive, and then dispatch that battery from 4 to 6 p.m. on the hottest days of the year. As a matter of fact, South River, one of our friends in the Public Power Association of New Jersey, is in the midst of installing a battery system for peak shaving.
So, and both. Speaking of electric, obviously we've mentioned gasoline prices and diesel prices, and I know we've run into some issues in the past with our electrical contracts and how long we buy power for. Where are we there, and where are we tied in through what time period, and are we going to be up against a wall with God knows what's going on in the world?
Yes, we will. I think so. We are completely hedged through the end of 2024. Yeah. So we have 2 years and 9 months where we are completely purchased out in the electric contracts. Beyond that, we are 50% hedged. We have 50% of what we think our load will be purchased out to 2029. Our load could be really different then. I was stunned to see 6 electric vehicle commercials on during the Super Bowl, and I read that Volkswagen is anticipating 25% of all their vehicles that they sell in 2025 will be electric. So I think we're going to see an increase in consumption, and we do know Rachel's a leader in this, that there are people who are choosing to electrify their homes and get off of natural gas, heat natural gas, hot water. So we're anticipating increasing consumption. So maybe we're not perfectly hedged all the way out, but we're hedged 50% right now, 50% out through the end of 2029.
Yeah, great, thank you. And my last question, I noticed the debt service line is up by about $100,000. Can you talk a little bit about that and call out any place else that might have a, increase?
Sure.
The viewers at home.
Couple of items increased in the budget. We kept as much as we could flat. Debt is increasing because that is the sewage treatment plant. The work that's been going on there, we're going to start paying the debt on the joint meeting, Madison-Chatham joint meeting. We're going to start paying that debt shortly. And so we have $165,000 in this year's budget. So the debt was set to go down, but it's going up this year. Other items that are increasing of note, we increased the stipend available to both the fire department for volunteers, as well as even for borough employees, to incentivize them to go get their firefighter one, and if they're here, drop their pen, wrench, or rake, and support the fire department during the day, during the week. So we have an increase in fire department stipends. We have an increase in fuel of $75,000, which I referenced. Mm-hmm. And we have an increase in the shade tree budget because we're just spending a lot of money with the Emerald Ash borer, and Ken asked for more money, and Gene agreed to it, and we need to take care of the trees. We need to do proper pruning of the trees. So those are kind of four major lines that are within the budget that are going up. You don't see those specific lines except for debt service.
Great. Thanks, Jim.
Maureen, and then Deb?
So actually, Jim, all my questions were asked by other council members, but I wanted to say thank you so much for this thorough presentation and crafting the budgets from year to year. You do a really wonderful job.
Thank you. And Deb?
All right, so I apologize. I normally try to get the questions to you ahead of time. I've gone off script with a couple
Whoa,
of them.
here we go. Okay, I'm ready.
But picking up off of Eric with the debt service, how's that going to affect our ability to come into compliance for the strategic planning?
It won't impact the strategic planning guidelines on the debt service side. We're at 6.9%. We can go to 10%. On that strategic planning guideline, we're okay. My concern with the strategic planning guidelines is we may not generate as much fund balance this year. We had a very unique situation happen that caused our fund balance to go up a little more even than I would have anticipated. If you recall, I'm like, boy, are we a plane? Are we going to level off or keep going down? We ended up leveling off, even maybe leveling off a little bit sooner than I thought. We might do this next year. We might drop a little bit. And the reason I say that is because fund balance is generated a number of ways. One way is through, and I'm wondering if we can get to that slide, Michael, on fund balance, which is
The graph one?
the actual 21. If Michael can get us to table 21. Fund balance is generated through more revenue than we anticipated. We put in the budget that we were going to generate $500,000 in construction fees, and we generated $800,000. That difference of $300,000 is fund balance. That's actually line number S1, non-taxable revenues. Another line that generated a significant amount of fund balance, one more slide, Michael, a significant amount of fund balance in the last year was cancellation of prior year appropriations. That's line S4. I know it's hard to read, but if you'll see, it's $3,280,000. That's much higher than any line going across. I gray out I just don't want to throw so many numbers at you that you freak out, so I gray out the other numbers. You can kind of see them. 1.2, 1.5, 2 million, 2.5. We've never been over $3 million. So, Jim, what happened in 2021 with cancellation of prior year appropriations? Well, that was 2020 pandemic when we didn't spend money because we weren't doing things. So certain lines didn't get spent, and as a result, they go into reserve and then they lapse the following year. that's not gonna happen next year. 3.2 million of lapsing appropriations is not gonna happen, and you can see I'm anticipating much less. So that's my concern, is where are we gonna be in fund balance? We have $3.1 million that we're putting into the capital improvement fund in the budget. We may be less next year. We may be less. Or maybe we put more utilities fund balance in. I don't want to do that, but if it's a kind of in our mind, a one-time, we know we're going to fall backwards. So that systemic concern of funding capital, well, that's my biggest long-term question. And if our municipal revenues come back and we get that $1 million that we've been off the last few years, then we're back in a good space.
All right, sticking with the electric, and then I'm going to move on to the two related to gas. Is there any thought to giving incentives with the electric cars and the charging stations, which I think are great around town, for giving homeowners, landlords, property owners incentives to make the houses or an apartment building, in the back or whatever, so that they can have the capability for charging as well?
I would like to start having that discussion with the stakeholders. Rachel and I have had some kind of discussions in regards to that. I think it makes sense. It's a little hard because I think people think of Teslas and then go, why on earth would we give somebody who can buy a Tesla an incentive to further help them purchase, since it's a luxury vehicle? But I think we're going to see a lot of non-Tesla vehicles out there. One way we can do it, which is kind of a really cool, it's going to fold in Rachel's concerns with capacity and your thoughts on, is to have a special charging rate for electric vehicles and allow them to get a lower price on their per kilowatt charge, but in return, they have to not charge during certain times. So give them the time of use rate would work that way, or Green Mountain Power has a pretty cool system where they have a preferred charger, and if you buy that charger, then they have the ability to actually turn that charger off just from 4 to 6 p.m. on the peak days. I'm a little leery of that because I'm like, my wife's got to go to the hospital and I can't charge my car. So I think the time of use rates is probably the way to go, and not actually shutting the people down. So, but we have we have the smart meters now, so we can say on peak days during those 3 hours, your kilowatt charge is going to be 25 cents. But in the nights and weekends, it's going to be 14 cents. And so we can do that. And then, you know what, when people plug in, maybe we make it a bit of the code that there's a sign that has to be on their charger that says peak times are here. Please avoid charging, because I can turn on my dryer at my house and say, delay start 3 hours. So I'm sure those chargers can do that.
Okay, and then going back to fuel, as somebody who had heart failure when it cost $82 to fill my minivan this afternoon, I had like half a gallon, I was on empty. But the question is you've added the $75,000 to the fuel lines. What happens, God forbid, that gas prices go above 6 or even higher? And then how does that, obviously it has a negative effect on the fund balance, but how does that kind of all play into the mess?
Sure. So importantly, how do we pay the bill? And we would pay the bill by doing a budget transfer, which we've done quite often in the past in November and December. There are budget lines that may not be, may have a little bit of extra that we can transfer money out of snow removal. It's the end of the winter is done. We're coming into the winter, but geez, we've got a little bit of extra money. We can transfer money across into that budget line. So that's how we would actually physically deal with it. Beyond that, if prices are significantly higher, it will just be one of those challenges we have to deal with in 2021 financially. And but I hope it's not going to happen.
You and me both. And then the last two questions, Michael, if you can go to slide 28, I think, the one that says administration's list of concerns. There we go. So the affordable housing mandated obligation, do we know when we find out if we secure the tax credits?
I believe, I'm looking at my tremendous boss, Ray Cody. I believe we're going to find out, Ray, on the tax credits by the end of the year. We'll find out if the RPM has been awarded tax credits. So, okay, yes, we're going to know by then.
We have to break ground by October of this year or next year? October of this year. And then, where did the other one go? When we printed it, it didn't print the comment by the, by what it actually says. So my question is, what does this have to be done by? I'm just figuring out, I think it's the $820,000 in expenses to upgrade our substation.
That is correct. So the substation has to be done in 2 years. I think we can probably ask for an extension. We are seeing tremendous pressure on supply chain issues. This isn't a transformer, it's other pieces of equipment that we'd have to install in the substation, but right now, transformers we normally could get in 4 months, it's over 2 years to get them, and that's problematic. So we actually had a meeting with our staff this morning and expressed to them if they want to kind of pre-purchase more product that they know they're going to need, whether it's something for the water utility or the sewage treatment or electric utility, that we should look to advance purchases that maybe weren't going to be made until October, November, do them now because of supply chain.
And then, Lisa, I may be putting you on the spot about parking. Lisa? Sorry. But the question, obviously we can't predict, but do you, now that people are, and I'm going to use Rachel as an example, going back into the city at least some days a week, are we starting to see people ask for those commuter parking? Okay, just because so it can.
So those viewing at home probably heard the question, but the answer is that we are seeing the trends moving up, but it's still far away. And our assumptions, and as you'll hear a little bit later in tonight's meeting, our assumption is that we will not be at the level of commuter parking in the next 2 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years probably more likely, if ever.
I'm done until my next phone call to you.
No worries, thank you. Okay, Mayor, any?
All right, I think, any other questions or comments? Are we comfortable? We've got a consensus to move forward with as prepared, so we will, Jim will return in 2 weeks with the budget for introduction ready to go off to the state. So under the guidelines that were just presented in that presentation.
Thank you.
Very well done. Thank you. all.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, now we move on for ordinance for hearing. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinance is scheduled for hearing, were introduced by title and passed on a first reading at the regular meeting of the council held on February the 28th, 2022. All were posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting same.
I call up ordinances for second reading. Ask the clerk to read said ordinance by title. Ordinance 7-2022.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $500,000 from the Electric Capital Improvement Fund for a portion of the purchase of a radio system for the Borough of Madison Emergency Services.
I open the hearing for ordinance 7. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 7-2022.
Mayor, I second the ordinance.
Council discussion. Deb?
Just a quick comment to remind anybody watching that not only will this help within Borough, it is also going to be tied to the schools, so that if there's an emergency at the schools, the communication can be faster. So another shared service between the Borough and the Board of Ed.
Thank you. Rachel?
Can you refresh our memory, perhaps Jim, about how this $500,000 appropriation works with the American Rescue Plan funds and the relationship between this money and what we expect to receive for the same project?
He's working his way to the microphone.
Thanks, Jim. Sorry to
Sure,
make you
no problem.
hustle.
We anticipate the radio program costing us $2 million. We have $1.9 million in American Rescue Plan dollars, which we appropriated through a temporary emergency edit to the temporary budget. a mouthful, but we passed a temporary budget in January, and so we have now, once this ordinance passes, have appropriated $2 million, and we can move ahead. We're accelerating this because we're concerned about the price of materials going up in the coming weeks. So of the $1.9 million in American Rescue Plan, 1.5 is dedicated to the radio, along with this from the electric utility.
I see. So this isn't like a grant where we front the money and then we sort of pay ourselves back. This is money we're spending, and it's about a quarter of what the total is.
Correct, yes,
project.
yes. The electric utility has the capacity, and no pun intended, and the electric utility also will obviously benefit tremendously. They're one of the utilities that's going to be utilizing it, along with ambulance and police and fire and Board of Education and Public Works and the water utility.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 7-2022 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. Ordinance 8-2022.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 166 of the Borough Code entitled Streets and Sidewalks regarding outdoor dining.
I open the hearing for ordinance 8. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Step right on up. Tom. And this is
Tom Allen Putis, 27 Pomeroy Road. I looked for this also on the Borough website, and it might have been there, but I couldn't find it there, so I'm not sure exactly what it entailed. Full disclosure, I am a business owner in town, and we do have outdoor dining. Maybe some of you have been there in the past. But I think that the additions that we made during COVID, which were necessary for multiple reasons to help some of the businesses survive, also promoted a lot more walking in the town. I don't think anybody can challenge that. Hopefully we've done it respectfully to the other businesses, and now they're benefiting too, because we're bringing residents from other towns to come and use our dining. I think we need more. In a responsible way, and I'm sure you're discussing that amongst all the borough administration. But the fact that you guys are focused on making that a part of the future of the outdoor of the borough, I think that's commendable. So thank you very much. And I don't know what you're exactly doing. I'm assuming that you're making it a good part of the future of outdoors activity in the borough. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment, please step forward. This is still on the ordinances, yeah. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 8-2022.
I'll second it.
Council discussion, I'm going to share some comments. Some of this I said 2 weeks ago, but I shared it with email to a couple of Waverly Place business owners, because I did get, I think most of us did receive some comments and concerns. So somewhat along the lines of Tom Howard Putis's comments, we learned a lot of lessons in the pandemic, and so we don't turn our back on those lessons. We move forward with them. So this is what I shared. For one, this ordinance is not restricted to only Waverly Place, but is a full business district, and this is as far as allowing the use of in-the-street dining. There are other things also in this which extends a full year for sidewalk dining, and some regulations for on-site outdoor dining. But as far as the in-the-street, it is in the business district, the exception being Main Street, which as a state highway is regulated by DOT. And this certainly is an ordinance that's not meant to place one business over another, but to understand that individual businesses do not necessarily make a successful downtown, but it's a collection of businesses and the full experience that leads to a successful business district. While the last 2 years have been very difficult, Madison has been above the curve, and that is a result of the innovative shop owners and a governing body committed to supporting a vibrant downtown. And as we come out of this pandemic, we must continue to be innovative by creating a great experience for our residents and visitors. And as we look to this ordinance, we understand that parking is important to our downtown, but we know it's just part of the puzzle. As malls pulled from downtowns in the 70s through the aughts, it wasn't for parking that we went to the malls, as we often ended up parking in overwhelming lots, walking quite a distance just to get to the wrong entrance. But the reason we went there, it was for the variety of stores and the overall experience. The busy corridors, the gathering places, the food courts all became a key part of the day of shopping. And now here we are, the malls are fading and the downtowns are making a comeback. The successful downtown centers will be the ones that are visibly active with the right mix of businesses. Let's be clear, we are not a Morristown, a Summit, or Maplewood, but if we don't think that's the competition, we're in trouble. They are the competition. So if we don't create an active downtown, we will fall behind. The pandemic showed us how downtowns can be reinvented, and successful has also given us empty commuter lots. So this has given us an opportunity, with help of Eric and also Deb working on this, is we're going to be introducing an ordinance a little bit to create more shopper parking. You know, tonight's ordinance will do this through moving the current merchant parking lot 1 block, and as I checked on Google, it's all of 400 feet from Green Avenue to the Maple Prospect lot, and the current commuter spots in Maple Avenue will become dedicated to merchant only, and as we just talked about, the drop in commuter demand for space, the merchants will be able to use the Prospect lot for also parking. So by freeing up Green Avenue, which would become a 2-hour shopper parking, will create 50 more parking spaces just steps away from Waverly. So this is all part of creating a great downtown. So I hope everyone understands that we are working very hard, and we will continually be innovative and try to lead the way. So any other comments? Eric and then Deb.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As you indicate, visibility of the vitality, we are very lucky that we don't have numerous empty storefronts, but when people are inside doing whatever they're doing, you can't see them. So, moving some of this activity where people can see it, I think is an important piece. I think the other item of this is taking what we learned from the pandemic, and not only did we learn that outdoor dining can be successful, I think we also learned that we need to put some limitations and kind of corral some of that activity, if you will. So, this ordinance, I think, is a good balance of that, where we are really striking down some very clear guidelines for the food establishments that are utilizing sidewalk dining or the in-street dining, and really putting up some, barriers, if you will, on what they can and can't do and when they can do it, which is, the lessons we've learned over the last 2 years. So I think to your point, this is an important balancing act, and I think this ordinance does it.
Thank you. And Deb?
Just to build on a little bit of what Eric said, since he stole quite a bit of mine. I think for me, there's a couple of things. I did talk to some of the shop owners that have concerns when I was downtown. And I do hear them, but at the same time, I do think that the parklets are great. I know I was thrilled to be eating outside as late as October. I will admit, once November hit, I was done. It was too cold. So that's good. And like Eric said, the restrictions, and for me, it was the restrictions on the sidewalks, where it became very difficult to get through in front of the restaurants, and kind of enforcing those and setting them up to be clearer, I think is a really good step, which will also help make it so that people can easily walk up and down the sidewalks. And I am totally guilty of driving in circles on Waverly, U-turning at each end twice, and then I give up and go to King's. And the reality is I could just park on King's. It's probably not even 400 feet from those parking spots. So, and I'm thrilled with, endorsing Eric's idea about the slight parking change. I think that will also help, because it's seemingly closer than where Maple is, even though I'm not sure how much closer it is. So again, I think like Eric said, this strikes a nice balance.
And to clarify a couple of things that are in there, are defining how much space has to be left open for sidewalk traffic or pedestrian traffic. The parklets, which is the in-the-street parking besides having barricades, has to also be flushed to the curb, so they have to build platforms also in a way to allow the stormwater to pass through and not create dams. And so there are some more regulations. Also very important is we did have a 2-year moratorium on fees we charge for sidewalk dining and outdoor dining. That will end, and there will be a charge, and there will be a higher charge for use of parking spaces to create outdoor dining, because it's not only our downtown that benefits through being vibrant, it is the business owners that create more tables to have customers that are being a little more successful. And so we'll be following up the resolution with those rates once the ordinance is in place. Any other comments? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 8 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. Ordinance 9-2022.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $75,000 from the Electric Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of a dump truck and related equipment for the electric department.
I open the hearing for ordinance 9. Anyone wishing to comment on this ordinance, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 9-2022.
Second?
Any council discussion? Deb?
Just a quick question, Jim. I'm going to put you on the spot to see if my memory's right. The dump truck is so that the electric department has their own rather than sharing? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, it's a vehicle they need. They'll actually put a plow on it, and they actually do some plow work around the substations and things like that as well. So it's a vehicle that the superintendent has said they needed, and so we're going to accommodate them.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Rachel?
Since every time we purchase a vehicle, there's a question about whether there's an option for an electric or hybrid vehicle, I'll just mention that Jim Mattina, the superintendent of the electric department, and Ken O'Brien have separately and together advised that they don't make electric vehicles in this class of duty vehicle. They're not available on the market yet. However, our department heads are in conversation currently talking about the opportunities to electrify their fleet and looking to make a strategic plan for how they can, where it's feasible and where the industry supports it, electrify their vehicles. So it's a constant topic of discussion. Doesn't apply to this vehicle, but it's on their minds, and it's something that they're working towards.
Yep. Thank you. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 9-2022 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. And now we go on to our second of 2 invitations for public comment. This is when you may comment on any topic, and as the same rules apply, please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, but we'll give you a 1-minute grace and ask you to stop at 4. Flip a coin and decide who's...
Hi, Claire Whitcomb, 12 Fairwood Road. I want to compliment the council, first of all, for really robust and interesting discussions about the topics at hand. I mean, people ask a lot of good questions. There's a lot of good commentary. I was really interested in the thoughtfulness of the downtown presentation. Eric, I liked your comments on energy resilience and some other methods that we could use. I mean, Chatham's really interested in microgrids. There seems to be a lot of forward-thinking things we can do in the future. I'm personally sort of desperate to get off gas because it makes, every time I look at the headlines, I'm like, Howard, we got to lose the boiler, and there's no way we can. So I want to talk briefly about something about Mikey Sherrill, because she made some really excellent comments about to kick off her environment subcommittee hearing on green infrastructure and protections against flooding, and I think they're very relevant to many things we're talking about in resilience in Madison. She began by talking about improving, quote, our ability to quantify the benefits of natural infrastructure, like reduction in flood risk or erosion. She described the co-benefits of nature-based infrastructure as not easily monetized. She noted that these can include the public health benefits of increased greenery, support for natural habitats and wildlife, or the sequestration of vast quantities of carbon. This ties into a lot of things that we deal with on site plans, you know, preserving trees, keeping our shade tree canopy. Obviously, the 53 acres of the Drew Forest capture and purify approximately 7.1 million gallons of rainfall each year. So they basically filter that, as Julia Summers said, for free. They channel it into our aquifer. So what is the monetary value for this? The DEP has actually calculated it. It is $1,532,336 per year. And this is a service for the Buried Valley Aquifer, where we get our drinking water, along with 13 other towns. So thank you very much. You guys are doing great work.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Tom Harlan Putis, 27 Palmer Road. Last time. Are we the only ones actually listening and watching the council meeting today?
No, we have a live feed, YouTube
I was
Live
looking
also.
for the cameras, all right.
Yeah.
They're watching us here somewhere? Up there?
There.
Okay, well, that's, okay. That's promising, because you didn't get a lot of people to come out yet. I don't know why. I was very excited to be able to see all your handsome and beautiful faces again in person. So a couple of comments, positive. Claire brought up some really great points. She's always spot on with a lot of her observations, which, you know, luckily there's people in town that think about that, because it does make a big deal to preserve our natural resources, to be part of filtering all the flooding and everything else that's affecting us. The gentleman that made the wayfinding presentation did a great job. I'm glad that the borough's thinking ahead to make the all the signage and make it more comfortable for visitors to come to town, or easier to find whatever it is that we want them to seek out. I wish he was here, because I had some questions for him. Oh shoot, I'm sorry. There's my family looking for me. Sorry about that. One thing that I wanted to ask him about, which I know I've been hounding you all about, is how he feels about putting, sorry Claire, idling signs, or no idling signs around town, in addition to the ones that he's putting out. And maybe that's a choice of the borough. I don't really know, but just was going to ask him, since he seems to be an expert on what type of signage goes in certain parts of the borough. But besides that, he also mentioned, somehow briefly, I thought I heard something about digital signage. And I had in the past, I think when I was on school board, when I had just left school board, and Lisa was part of it also, to a certain extent, we were trying to collaborate with the borough to put some digital signage, at least in front of the schools. And I think that the junior school, which has a sign probably from before you were in school, Mayor, and you were only out of school like 30 years ago, so that sign might be from 100 years ago. But that would have been a great location, let's say during COVID, to just give passersby information. We can't assume that everybody in the borough is visiting RoseNet all the time, or getting messages. And even during normal times, when we're having any events, you could have 10,000 cars pass that sign. You could be announcing May Day, Bottle Hill Day, whatever else is going on in the borough. I mean, I think it's a good opportunity, done in a tasteful way, to share that we can give some information to people passing by, and that the schools also. Because right now, whatever's there, it might as well not be there, because I don't believe anybody really pays any attention to it. Sorry, Mayor, I'm almost done. The other thing about Jim's budget presentation, fantastic, Jim. Thank you so much. I was curious to know, and you probably have said this in the past, when the debt service ends, the major debt service that we have for the public safety building, because that's going to bring a lot of savings to the borough. I don't know what we're going to do with the money that we save. Maybe some of it will go to tax relief or some other spending also. And then I wanted to know if the renovation that you're planning for the east wing of Hartley Dodge is going to...
1 minute.
1 minute? 4 minutes?
We're at 3 right now, so you got 1 minute left.
I thought you gave me another 4. Okay.
I didn't count the compliments. Call us handsome and beautiful was not counted.
That gets me a credit.
I started it later. So you have a minute from now.
Especially Ray. I haven't seen Ray around. Hi, Ray. So I wanted you to just elaborate if there is going to be, how that's going to be paid for, because I don't even know what the project's going to be. I didn't know that you're going to do something with historic preservation, and I don't know if the school board's out as a possible tenant. And then whoever uses the east wing of Hartley Dodge, will they be paying rent? Will we get a little revenue from them to offset whatever the expense might be if they're not paying for it themselves? And then again, parking stations around town, great area, great way to make some revenue to promote more, EV cars and whatever else we can do. A lot of good comments from everybody tonight. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tom, and you made it there. So, Jim, as far as debt service timing, can do that off the, and while you're as you're walking up there, 2 weeks ago, we approved a resolution that approved the contract that was signed with the Historical Society, Madison Historical Society. We are doing a ceremonial, actual contract signing tomorrow with them, and they will be using the main level of the east wing, which is, would be called the first floor, and primarily to run a museum. They are putting $500,000 towards the overall renovation, and we are also pursuing, we've had some grants, state historic preservation grants, and we've also set aside some money. Our plan right now is that most likely the upper level and lower level would be borough used. The Board of Education did have a study and decided that space on this level would not be appropriate and workable for them, so they are staying where they are, at least for the long-term future or short-term future. Maybe they have other plans. Jim?
Mayor, I don't have the answer here. I'm actually looking at the Housing Authority audit, but I can get the answer, and I'll revert back to council and to Mr. Harlan-Pudis with that. My guess is this is 30-year debt, and we have paid off about 12 years.
2030 for some of the... 2038, sorry.
2038, okay.
2038, yep.
Yep.
There's a
Is that right?
30-year bond.
18 years, yep, okay.
While you're up there, what about the MRC debt? What's left on that?
I can look that up on my phone. I presented it back in December. I choose to not remember things I don't have to remember if I can get them.
I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else wishing to comment? Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting. We now move on to the introductory ordinances. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Ordinance is scheduled for first reading, have a hearing date set for March the 28th, 2022. All will be published in the Madison Eagle, posted on the bulletin board, and made available to members of the public requesting copies.
I call up ordinances for first reading and ask the Borough Clerk to read said ordinance by title. Ordinance 10-2022.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 94, Appendix C of the Borough Code entitled Electric Department Rules and Regulations regarding additions and alterations.
Mayor, I move ordinance 10-2022.
Second?
Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Ordinance 11-2022.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 134 of the Madison Borough Code entitled Parking Lots.
Mayor, I move ordinance 11-2022.
Mayor, I second ordinance 11-2022.
And this is the one I mentioned in my comments related to the previous ordinance, shifting the merchant parking to Maple/Prospect and turning the Green Avenue parking lot into shopper parking, creating 50 spots, right steps away from downtown. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Ordinance 12-2022.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 94, Appendix A of the Borough Code entitled Schedules and Rates for Electric Utilities regarding net metering.
Mayor, I move ordinance 12-2022.
Second.
Any council discussion? Deb?
Jim, we're going to make sure you get your steps in. While you're walking up, though, just so that the public is aware, this is regarding the solar credits that people can get on their electric bills, and there was a rule that it had to stay. You couldn't cut it, no, you had to cut a check, and this allows them to roll the credit over.
That's exactly correct. Solar customers earn credits on what they generate, and they purchase electricity as well. If they net have a credit on their bill, with this change in the ordinance, it will allow them the opportunity to choose to allow that credit to roll over and not have it cashed out. The current ordinance says it has to be cashed out. An example, maybe someone's children are coming home and they know they're going to be spending more electricity, or maybe they're buying an electric vehicle and they know they're going to be charging, or maybe they're electrifying their house and they know that they're going to be consuming more electricity. Instead of cashing out that credit, they can continue to accrue it to a certain dollar amount.
I was going to say to 750, right?
$750, yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
A consent agenda resolutions. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure is supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
Mayor, I move consent agenda resolution R93-2022 through R100-2022.
Second.
Any council discussion or any that need to be pulled? Roll call vote.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Okay, there is no unfinished business. Approval of vouchers. Will the clerk please read the voucher totals?
Yes, for the current fund, $283,854. For the general capital fund, $389.99. From the electric capital fund, $88,562.50. From the electric capital fund, $4,900. From the water operating fund, $24,472.55. And from the water capital fund, $2,129. From the trust, $16,764.15. The total, $421,072.19.
Mayor, I move the approval of the vouchers.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
And our new business, I'd like to make the following appointments from Board of Education representatives. These were appointed by title, but now we will actually put the actual names behind the titles. For the DDC, Stephen Tyndall. Recreation Advisory Committee, David Orwin. Sustainability Advisory Committee, Sarah Fisher, and Complete Streets, Grace Kim. Ask for a motion.
Mayor, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And
And Mayor, I move we adjourn the meeting.
all in favor?